Hello everybody and welcome to another edition of the weekly Top 10 Light Novels in Japan. This is going to be for June 7th to the 13th of 2021. Now, once again, I take these top 10 lists of the individual volumes from 3 lists on the Oricon website. That's the light novel work, paperback, and literary book lists. Basically, depending on how publishers list their titles, they can sometimes not end up on the light novel works list, even if they are considered light novels. So I'll be, of course, counting down the top 10 individual volumes, and then I'll be covering the top 10 series of the week. So let's just get started. First off, though, now because sometimes I'm blending one or two entries or several entries into the light novel list, sometimes titles can get bumped off that were otherwise in the top 10, and because this title's technically number 11, but because it is a brand new series and because it is from an author that has a popular series that's already available in English, I still thought I should include it in the list. So technically we're doing a top 11 this week. So at number 11 with 4,216 copies sold, it's volume number 1 of Hollow Regalia, Corpse Reviver. Now this is from the same author as Strike the Blood, so if you're familiar with that series. The girl is a dragon. The boy killed the dragon. In a world where Japanese people have died, they meet. On that day, a huge dragon appeared over Tokyo, and it was the beginning of the collapse of the failed state of Japan. The emergence of monsters called beasts and the genocide that took place around the world killed Japanese, turning the whole of Japan into a lawless zone occupied by the armed forces and criminal organizations of each country. Higehiro is one of the few survivors of Japan. Having acquired an immortal body by bathing in the blood of a dragon, he spends his lonely days as a collector who carries works of art from the uninhabited ruins of Tokyo. It was Julie and Rose, twin girls who claimed to be art dealers, who visited Higehiro. The two asked him to recover a mysterious work, Kusinada, who has the ability to follow beasts. A story of a new dragon and a dragon slaughterer, spun by a boy and a girl who met in the ruined city. So, pardon that description if that sounds a little bit wonky. It's about as good as various translations, machine translations could do for me. So, basically, I mean, this is, well, boy kills monster, Japan has total horrible thing happen to it, becomes a very dystopian type setting. So, sounds kind of interesting. Again, I mean, it's from the author of Strike the Blood. If you're familiar with the Strike the Blood series, I mean, I would expect that there's going to often be monsters of the week that have to be defeated. I am going to think that there's probably going to be a bit of fan service, probably a harem. Yeah, I mean, like really, as I read this, it just basically says to me that instead of being a vampire, the main character bathed in the blood of a dragon. So, kind of same idea. So, getting into the actual top 10, at number 10 with 4,911 copies sold. This is volume number 15 of Didn't I Say to Make My Abilities Average in the Next Life? This one, of course, we do have licensed for English release from 7 Seas. When gifted student Kurihara Misato dies right after her high school graduation, she meets God and has a peculiar request to make her abilities average in the next life. But few things, especially wishes, ever go quite as planned. As she navigates her new life as a 10-year-old girl in a magic-filled world, she realizes God has a unique definition of average. So again, this is a series that's already had at least one season of anime. You know, it's a bunch of cute girls going on adventures and kicking a lot of ass. That's which, I mean, you know, I'll be honest, I kind of think is a winning combination. At number 9 with 5,186, copies sold. This looks like it's a brand new series, actually, the first volume, and that is Silent Witch. Monica Everett, the only magician in the world who can use non-chanting magic. A young hero who rejected the legendary black dragon alone. However, her true nature is that she's super shy. I practiced non-chanting magic, so I didn't have to speak in public. Monica, who has been selected as one of the 7 sages without being aware of her talents, is forced to perform a top-secret mission to escort the second prince. She is timid, but the strongest. A thrilling fantasy in which a withdrawn genius witch hides her true identity and secretly judges the evil approaching the prince. Again, hazards of these brand new series, you kind of have to rely on machine translation because I'm not a translator and can't afford to pay a professional one. But anyway, it gives you a general idea of what this one is about. So you have, obviously, a witch who is ridiculously powerful, but the reason she's ridiculously powerful is because she's super shy. Sounds cute, and I kind of like the cover of this one. I think this could be kind of neat to have. Plus, it's just a pure fantasy, which is always nice. At number 8, with 5,552 copies sold, volume number 2 of My House is Independent because it was said to be useless. Now, I'll be honest with you, it's like Yakudatazu to iwareta no de, watashi no ie wa dokuritsu shimasu. Pardon my disgusting pronunciation of Japanese. I still haven't gotten any better of it. This one is, again, a much newer series. It's a series, though, the author, it looks like, has had a couple of other series that have had a number of volumes to each of them in the past, but none that we have in English. And honestly, of all the series, this one is the one that the translations made the absolute least sense. Basically, it looks like there is this kingdom that was destroyed, and because it was pretty much destroyed and left without a military or anyone defending it, hordes of monsters rushed in to take the territory, and that one of the sort of ancestors, I guess, of a powerful entity, or I don't know, summons a dragon for help, and the dragon ends up basically blowing away all the monsters, and this person who summoned it becomes ridiculously powerful, and then just kind of is like, well, what the heck, if nobody really gives a crap about my territory because they think it's just been run over by monsters and it's worthless, I can just do my own thing, and I don't have to worry about the king or anybody else getting into my business. That's sort of the gist I get of this. Obviously, if you want to look it up and kind of come up with a better description for it, feel free. The Japanese titles in the description down below. At number 7, with 6,938 copies sold, volume number 4 of Housekeeper of the 100 Blossom Palace. That's His Majesty the Emperor, Is that more important than a steamed bun? Yui Mei has 2 secrets. First, she retained memories of her past life. Second, it is highly probable that she is a daughter of the Sai Kingdom's emperor. As a certified die-hard fan of Chinese dramas in her past life, she willingly participated in the court lady selection just for the sake of seeing the imperial harem in the flesh. So, another popular light novel series, obviously, that is leaning very heavily on that ancient Chinese empire imagery. I do find it kind of interesting that we're seeing more and more light novels that are kind of using that Chinese history and the imagery of it and the empire system and everything else to become popular. It's interesting to me because you don't have to scratch the surface too far to see that there's obviously some very strained relationships and thoughts about the Chinese and Japanese between each other. So I just find that very interesting that seems to be becoming an increasingly popular fictionalized location. At number 6, with 7,150 copies sold, volume number 5 of Higehiro, After Being Rejected, I shaved and took in a high school runaway. So this one, of course, was number 1 on the list last week. It's the final volume of Higehiro. As I understand it, the anime looks like it's actually adapting all of these 5 volumes, although obviously cutting out, I'm thinking, some considerably large chunks to cover 5 volumes in a single core. This one about a 26-year-old employee at a major IT company who, after confessing to the woman that he's had a crush on for 5 years and getting brutally rejected, runs into this teenage runaway on his way home, and she basically propositions him to allow her to stay at his place, and he doesn't take her up on the offer, but still lets her stay anyway. And from what I've been told, it's actually, despite the slightly sketchy sounding setup, it's actually a very decent slice of life, and that they have a very touching relationship that is not skeevy at all, and that it's much more about him helping her get back on her feet and seeing herself in a better light and getting her life into a better situation. So it'll be interesting. We do have the manga of this one has been now licensed, but no word on the light novels at this point. At number 5, with 7,290 copies sold, One Piece novel Heroines. So this one, again, was on the list last week. One Piece is always big selling stuff. This is a very typical thing they do with One Piece. They basically, there's short stories will run in the One Piece magazines, and then they'll collect all those short stories into a single light novel. Usually the light novels have like a bonus story, or they have artwork by the original artist and creator of One Piece. Stuff like that to basically provide more of a collector and incentive for people to pick it up. This is pretty much the exact same thing. It's just taking a look at several of the female characters of One Piece and putting them in stories where they are the main character. So again, I mean, given the juggernaut that One Piece is, not too surprising to see this hang around on the list for at least another week or two. At number 4, with 9,830 copies sold, volume number 7 of Reign of the Seven Spellblades. Springtime at Kimberly Magic Academy, when new students begin their first year. One boy, clad in black robes with a white cane and sword strapped to his hip, approaches the prestigious school. This young man, Oliver, must form a bond with a katana-wielding girl named Nao if he's to survive the dangers he's to face at this school that is anything but what it seems. Now, this one by the same author as Alderamin on the Sky, which of course we've never had in English, but we do have this one. This one is released in English by Yen On. The first 2 volumes are already available. It's a really, the first volume I really liked. It seems to be one of those series that people either think is really awesome or they just don't see what the big deal is. I haven't seen many people actually really heavily dislike it, but definitely there seems to be a very large disparity between the love and meh that I see about the series. I kind of am more in the love category. I actually have the second one that I'm going to be reading soon to review. At number 3, with 10,950 copies sold, Volume 10 of Eigthy-Six. The San Magnolia Republic has long been under attack by unmanned weapons from the neighboring empire. Against this onslaught, the Republic has also deployed similar weapons, narrowly avoiding great loss of life and impending disaster. Or at least that's how it seems. The truth is that it has never been possible to have no casualties. Young men and women drawn from the Republic's supposedly non-existent 86th District are organized into the 86 unit and then ordered to pilot the, quote, unmanned weapons before heading to battle. So, of course, this one, I mean, the series is popular regardless, but the anime has obviously been doing some serious favors to the sales of this series. This is a brand new volume hitting the top 10. It's just released, but the series itself has been in the top 10 series list for several weeks, obviously being propelled by sales of the previous volumes because of course the anime has been airing, just finishing up, and it's been very well received from what I can see, at least in the English fandom. So I expect that we're probably going to see this one hang around on the list at least for a little while, because I can see where if the anime comes to an end, it sounds like the anime for the most part is just volume 1, with some material from, I think, this volume, actually, number 10, because there is some side stories, I believe, or like some epilogue, like prologue type stories in this one. Because I saw a statement from the author that there was some material that they had given from volume 10 to the anime to use. And there is, of course, also some anime original stuff that they've used just to kind of, I guess, flesh out the story a little bit, flesh out the characters a little more, just so that they can actually just have that one volume in the first court. So I can see where this one could potentially remain on the list for a while afterwards, as people realize that's only the first book and they go seeking out the series to find more. At number 2, with 12,807 copies sold, volume number 8 of Osamake, Romcom Where the Childhood Friend Won't Lose. This one we do not currently have licensed, although it wouldn't surprise me if we get it licensed. Suehara Maru is childhood best friends with one of Hozumino High School's most popular girls, Kuraha Shida. Cute, outgoing, and affectionate, Kuraha is the perfect older sister type. She has boys constantly begging at her feet to be with her, yet when she confesses to Suehara one day, he immediately rejects her. He just can't think of her in that way. Besides, he already has his sights set on his first love, school idol and renowned author Shirokusa Kashi. Suehara believes that he has a chance with Kachi after one fateful meeting, but soon he finds out that Kachi has a boyfriend. With his dreams now shattered, Suehara agonizes over what could have been. That is, until Kuraha approaches him with a proposal. Let's get revenge. So this one obviously has an anime that's just, again, finishing up its airing in the next week or so. So not a huge surprise to see the latest volume up there on the list. Although it seems to me like this has been a relatively popular series regardless, but I'm sure that the anime hasn't hurt, and I'm sure the anime probably only covered, say, maybe the first 1 to 4, maybe 5 or 6 volumes. I can't imagine doing any more than that. So obviously, if people have been up on the anime, they're probably picking up these later volumes so they can continue on with the story. Finally, at number 1 with... man, every time there's a new volume of this series, whether it's the main series or this spin-off series, it always just obliterates everyone else. So just bear in mind that volume 2, number 2 on this list, had 12,807 copies sold. So number 1 had 36,218 copies sold, and it's volume number 8 of Sword Art Online Progressive. Yes, I don't know, it doesn't matter what your personal feelings are on Sword Art, this series is mad money, and people just eat it up. Yeah, and honestly, you know what? If you were going to only read one Sword Art series, I would probably say read Progressive, because I'm kind of the mind that it's the best part of Sword Art. So if you're not really familiar with Progressive and what it is, I'm thinking anybody listening to this must know what Sword Art Online is. You probably know what Progressive is too, but basically, when Riki Kawahara, the author, wrote Sword Art Online, the very first story, the Einkrad, where, you know, you have 10,000 players, they get trapped in this video game, an MMORPG, and essentially they're told, like, you have to either beat the game or you're trapped here until you die, basically, and that if you die in the game, you die for real. And the story follows this main character, Kirito, as he tries to beat the game. Well, when Kawahara wrote that, he was writing it as an entry for a contest, which meant that it had to end. And so the Einkrad, which is basically the story that lots of people try to explain, oh, this is what Sword Art's about, only is one book out of what are there now, 24? I know it's into the 20s. Anyway, basically what Progressive is it's Kawahara going back and writing the Aincrad part of Sword Art Online as its own standalone series. So instead of like, surprise, we just skipped 75 floors that we're going towards the end, you're actually following Kirito, and in this one a lot more with Asuna as well, as they're fighting their way up floor by floor. There are characters introduced in Progressive that it sounds like are actually now playing parts in the latest Sword Art Online arc, which is Unidol Ring. So you might actually benefit from reading some Progressive if you're keeping up with the main series. I don't know just how left behind you might feel otherwise. I'm not too sure. I haven't gotten to that part in the actual main series yet. So now I'll cover the top 10 series. Now I'm not going to be going over these quite as much because of course most of them I've already talked about in the top 10 volumes, but there are a couple on this list that didn't have an individual volume in the top 10. The first of those at number 10, which is Spy Classroom. This one we do have a license for English release from Yen On. The first volume is slated for July. We'll see if it gets bumped back or if it actually comes out in July, but it is coming very soon. The world's greatest spy creates an organization dedicated to tackling missions considered impossible, though it remains to be seen why the 7 members of this group all have no experience. This one just seems to be a series that's getting a lot of push from their publisher. There's also a manga adaptation of this one. It seems to be doing pretty well. The most recent volume was on the top 10 list a couple weeks back. So I expect that we're going to see this series continue to pop up for some time. At number 9, The Detective is Already Dead. Again, another series where the most recent volume has been in the top 10 for the last couple weeks. However, it's fallen off the top 10 this week, but still the series overall is still in the top 10. This one about a high school boy who on a hijacked airplane ends up becoming the assistant of this detective, and they end up having all these adventures together until she is killed or dies, or well, that's kind of left as a bit of a mystery. But in any case, he figures that his life is going to become all normal and easygoing and that he'll never have adventures like that until several years later he's approached by a girl who very much reminds him of the deceased detective. This one is coming out in English pretty much the end of this month, so just in another week or so. And of course, there is an anime going to be debuting for this one in the summer season. So in just a couple weeks, we're going to have the anime of this one. So again, no big surprise that it's in the top 10 light novels. I imagine there's probably some people that are buying up and reading ahead before the new season starts. Plus, it just seems to be a pretty popular series that I've heard some fairly decent good things about, and I'm looking forward to checking out myself. At number 8, One Piece. Like, seriously, is anybody all that surprised? I mean, given that the top 10 series involves more than just the most recent volume, it involves all previous volumes and even in some cases manga adaptations and stuff like that, not a big surprise that One Piece is on this list. The only thing that I always wonder about with that, though, is that at what point do they consider it not part of the light novel list anymore? Like, you would think that given how many volumes of manga there are, how many light novels there are, and everything else of One Piece, that would probably be in the top 10 selling series if they included all of that stuff, like all the time, but that doesn't seem to be the case. I don't know. It's just one of those things that I think about when I do these lists. At number 7, That Time I Got Reincarnated as a Slime. Another series without a most recent volume in the top 10 volumes list, but again, another series benefiting a great deal from anime adaptation happening. So again, I mean, there's really not much to say. It's a kingdom building series about a businessman in our world who's killed in a robbery and finds himself, well, literally reincarnated as a slime. and it's about how he kind of starts unifying monsters and building a new society and such. So the anime seems that it's been fairly well received, and I would certainly think that it's the anime in particular that's driving sales of this series. At number 6, The Apothecary Diaries. Now, this I just find really interesting because, again, this is a series that doesn't have a volume in the top 10. It hasn't been in the top 10 for at least the past, I guess now, 3 or 4 weeks, and yet it continues to be in the top 10 series. It does not have an anime announced. It does have a manga, though, that apparently, I guess, both the manga and light novels sell very well, so that could be part of it. It just seems like a series that's been fairly well received and that people, quite a number of people, are fans of. Again, it's kind of interesting to me that it's again like that number 7 on the individual list, where the Housekeeper of the 100 Blossom Palace, it very much is using that imagery of empirical China as its setting and its background. They don't quite come out right and say China, but you know, and it's not an isekai, but you know, I'm just saying it's just that imagery it seems to share with that other ones. At number 5, Higehiro. After being rejected, I shaved and took in a high school runaway. Again, the last volume of the series, still selling some decent numbers of copies. The anime coming to a close. No big surprise there. At number 4, Reign of the 7 Spellblades. I'm going to say this is mostly being propelled by the fact that there's a new volume. You know, it hasn't been on the list up until this week, so that's where I think that's coming. That big push is coming from. At number 3, Osamake, Romcom, where the childhood friend won't lose. Again, are we surprised given that the newest volume is sitting there at number 2 on this list? Not all that shocking. At number 2, Eigthy-Six. Again, the individual volume, you've got really good sales for volume number 10 that is on this list for this week. I mean, sitting at number 3 in the top 10 of individual volumes. Add on to that all of the other previous 9 volumes, the manga, and the fact that you've got an anime that's being very well received. No surprises that this is sitting very close to the top spot. However, again, given the absolute monstrous disparity between the sales of volume place number 1 and 2, it's going to surprise absolutely no one that at number 1 we have Sword Art Online Progressive, which again also does have an anime adaptation of it. Sorry, not an anime adaptation while it's getting one, but it does have a manga series. The light novels are just juggernauts as they are, especially given their relationship to the main series. And yes, it does actually, there is an anime coming out. It looks like they're doing sort of like a film, like OVA type thing, I think. I haven't researched it too heavily, but it looks interesting to me. I'm kind of curious to see how they're going to play it off. I think really they're going to focus a lot more, based on the trailers I've seen, and admittedly I probably haven't seen all of them, but based on the trailers I've seen, it looks like it's going to focus very heavily on Asuna as the main character, as opposed to Kirito, who's been the main character focus of the main series. So, could be interesting. I'm kind of curious to see whether they'll tweak things and stuff to make it sync up with the anime, or whether, like, how they're going to make that work. Since Progressive as the light novel is definitely doing some tweaks with the history and timelines of Sword Art Online. So, in any case, those are your top 10, both volumes and series in Japan of the week, June 7th to the 13th. It'll be interesting to see what's still going to be on this list next week. Definitely, I expect that Sword Art will still be relatively strong. Anytime that I've done lists like this in the past and Sword Art's come on, it usually lasts for a couple weeks in that top 10. So we will see just how things shake out next week. In the meantime, thanks so much for joining me in this video. If you like it, make sure you hit that like button. Let YouTube know that these are okay videos and that you'll want to keep seeing them, hit that subscribe, the bell notification. All those things are a huge help because YouTube loves to see that you love to see this stuff, and that definitely lets it know. In the meantime, thank you so much for checking out this video. I look forward to seeing you in my next one. Until then, bye-bye for now.